Welcome back, welcome in, and welcome all to another episode of the Like That podcast. And as you can see, if you're watching on Spotify or on your social media platforms, I know on YouTube you'll see it pretty clearly. But you got a couple guys with some bags over their heads. Myself, Brooklyn. No Nick this week, unfortunately. He was too ashamed of last week. I'm kidding. That was a bad joke. But he is in fact
bad joke. Reality.
Yeah, he's a little busy this week, but I think it's fitting. Some bags over us because picks of the week we're not what we wanted them to be, unfortunately. First time this in the podcast history that we've gone 0 for 3 on picks of the week, and I thought this was a fitting intro.
Something definitely had to change in terms of just can't just keep showing our face, smiling every week. Like, hey guys, listen to our picks. No, that was a letdown last week for a lot of reasons. But yeah, here we are.
This is so funny. I can barely see out of this, but
I can't, dude. You're on the right side of my screen, and I unfortunately can't see my right eye right now. It's my left is pretty much everything I got.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to keep this on for much longer, but talking about picks of the week, I mean, Chiefs, they go into overtime. They, for a while it looked bad, and then they go into overtime, and, I think if the Chiefs got the ball first, they would have scored a touchdown, no problem. They were moving pretty quick, but overtime rules, they got to take their field goal, and I lose on a half point. It wasn't just that we lost this week, but 2 of the 3 losses were within a point on the spread, and I think that was the painful thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm happy that Nick isn't here to speak for himself on this one, because this is just hard to kind of swallow that Philly choke. I mean, I know you and I spread wise were both riding Dallas there, and for good reason. Home game, volatile offense like that, and also I think that was their first game back home since the passing. So that was obviously another big statement that they wanted to make. But go to mine, Pats. For a while, it looked decent. They were scoring at a steady clip. They had a couple of goal line drives that Travion and Ramondre both got stopped at literally the one on both of those drives that just didn't work out for them, and that's really just upsetting in so many ways because it's the Bengals. Let up a late touchdown to keep it a sort of a game from the Bengals, and that just really screwed us there. And got 6 points, man. That was their win margin. Needed it at 7, and it didn't happen. Even though I needed it over 7, otherwise just get our money back. But hey.
Yeah, so I mean, to recap those, it was a half point L, a little hook from me on the Chiefs. The Cowboys score 24 unanswered points to beat the Eagles, and then the Patriots get stopped twice in the end zone on 4th and goal and end up not cover and win by 6. But with that being said, I'm gonna rip this bag off. It is time for Week 12.
Start the trend. It's Week 13, baby. It's a new week. We are back. Well, we are hopefully back. Nico's got some friends in the background. No Nick, but you got some guys in the back.
Sorry, I had to get situated. What's that?
I said, it's a new week, Week 13. We might not be like fully back, but we're trying to be. But I referenced, I got some friends in the background there. No Nick, but we got some pals.
Yeah, I'm the only one home right now, and the dogs are in my room. And to be honest, there might be a point where we have to make a quick cut because they're gonna see something and they're gonna start barking. But for right now, we got a little bit of a crowd. One thing we forgot to mention: Happy Thanksgiving. You're gonna be listening to this if you listen on Thursday. Quick thing that I just want to shout out. Obviously, I'm thankful for the podcast and for all the glorious football that we've seen. But this is it's a good time of year. Thankful for the turkey tomorrow. It's going to be super exciting. And the matchups for Thanksgiving football could not be better.
We got blessed this year. Really good card.
Jumping into it. We have Packers at the Lions. When we wrote on Sunday, it was 3. Now we're looking at a line of 2.5. One thing that I found, and I need to pull this up again, it's on Thanksgiving specifically, favorites since 2004 are 40-20 against the spread.
40-20?
Straight up, they're 51-9. Yeah, so it's crazy.
That is nuts. But I think this year it's real interesting the games we got.
maybe just straight up might still lean a certain way, but spread wise, I think some of these lines can be discussed either way, very much so.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a Packers and Lions team that are both 2-5 against the spread. So Josh Jacobs looks to be healthy for Green Bay, so that's going to be an interesting point. The Packers on Thanksgiving games are 16-20-2. Under LaFleur, I found this pretty interesting. The Packers are 18-6-1 against the spread as underdogs of 3 or less. But their last 8 games against the Lions, you're talking about 2-5-1 against the spread. And if you want to go all the way back to 2017, we're talking 4-12-1. So after hearing all of that, pretty obviously all three of us are on the Lions here at 2.5. Another thing to shout out Dan Campbell here. Dan Campbell, after not covering the spread in the following week, he is 19-5-1 against the spread.
Good coach, man. You can never argue against Campbell just in terms of, the type of productivity and efficiency he brings to his lineup. Like, absolutely nothing to argue against there. When the Lions do tend to lose, it's just some bad breaks to me. I honestly don't think they truly get outplayed too often. But then again, their offense is so dominant.
And one other thing that came out actually today is Frank Ragnow, after retiring in the offseason, is coming back to Detroit. And that's huge. I mean, the Lions, they've been good this year, don't get me wrong, but there's been a clear missing part, and that's been just the run game. And we say that after Gibbs' phenomenal week last week. But even then, there have been holes, and that Ragnow, even if he's I don't know 70% of the player that he was last year, that's an insane ad for this.
Dude, he's only 20. He's only 29. Like, I'm not saying in terms of football years, like he is getting up there, but for a guy who was as good as and as effective as he was, just to get him back still with some youth on his side is huge for them. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he broke the streak. He pulled a Calvin Johnson, pulled a Barry Sanders, saying "fuck the Lions, I can't do this anymore," which was at a pretty random point too. I mean, yeah, he's a little young. They were coming off of one of their best seasons in the last 10 years, but having him back is big. My player to watch of this game is going to be David Montgomery. We haven't seen too much from him the last couple weeks. Obviously, it was a big week from Gibbs that I mentioned previously. But Thanksgiving Day, he's balled out the last 2 for the Lions. And I already, I was making the spreadsheet, and I don't know why, but I just had this image of David Montgomery with a big turkey leg. And that's kind of the reason I went for it. I mean, Green Bay's defense, they've been all over the place, but I think it's going to be a game where the Lions are going to kind of dominate all over.
That's fair. And I think, for a while I was kind of like going between Green Bay and Detroit because Green Bay's defense overall has just been pretty sound. But now, the more I look at it, Green Bay's offense just doesn't have enough weapons, especially on the receiving side. Even, with Christian Watson starting to pick things up, becoming a lead target there. But looking at that game, I agree that, Lions are just in line to kind of just not clear house, but I think this is a little too narrow for what the Lions are capable of doing to Green Bay, especially at home.
Yep, no, I couldn't agree more. Might hear us flying through a little bit of this, but I got a lot of games this week, so I don't want this to hit 2 hours by any means. But crazy enough, I got a pick of the week right in front of us for the next matchup. Talking about the 4:30 game on Thanksgiving Day tomorrow. Today when you're listening to this, and that's going to be the Chiefs at the Cowboys. Nico, what are you doing? You're picking the Chiefs back-to-back weeks at 3.5 after they just screwed you? Hell yeah!
3 times actually. 3 times now. This will be.
Yeah, this might
possibly done.
Yeah, you can call it basic, you can call it boring, but you know what? Under the Patrick Mahomes led Kansas City Chiefs, the Chiefs have not lost 4 consecutive games against the spread. Last week I mentioned they haven't lost 3 straight games under Mahomes. And to that, that point stayed true, but they didn't cover. But there have been instances where they did go 0-3 against the spread, but 0-4 we have not seen. And talking about home favorites on Thanksgiving, talking about this Dallas team that the defense, it's gotten better the last 2 weeks. Quinnen Williams had a career, I think it was 8 pressures last week, and that's a career high for him. But
that's correct.
We're talking about the Chiefs here. They're a good team. That's a very basic thing to say, but you went out and you beat the arguably number one, I wouldn't say the favorites out of the AFC, but, a team that for most of the year has looked incredibly dominant. And this Dallas team, I don't want to give them too much credit because they've played really well the last couple weeks, but this is a come back down to reality type of game. And the Chiefs, I mean, second highest EPA, DVOA, they're in the top 3. Like even though the schedule doesn't look pretty, the record doesn't look pretty, but this is a team that is still my favorite to come out of the AFC. And I think they take care of business at 4:30 tomorrow or today. I keep doing that.
It's gonna happen a bunch of times. I'm not. It sucks for me because on the spreadsheet, you know where I'm leaning there.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Nick's following me on the Chiefs, but back-to-back weeks of you taking Dallas versus a pick of the week.
In any other circumstance, not against Dallas, I would absolutely lean with the Chiefs because every game for them is an absolute must-win. But Dallas's offense, to me, just stands out so much in how their offense is literally the one thing that keeps them capable of staying in a game every week. Now, that comeback against Philly was kind of crazy. I don't think we're really going to see that happen too much, but, Dallas has, enough offensive firepower to really go toe-to-toe with some of the better teams in just the league in general right now, and we really saw that with Philly, how they can be incredibly dominant at times. They can go on runs at times like that. And so far, Dallas's defense still not great, but with Quinnen Williams and, kind of, I would say like almost a refreshed Cowboys team right now, they got some momentum, still moving their way 2 straight, and maybe they don't win this game, but I think they have the capability to definitely keep it pretty close throughout the majority of the contest. But I could also see them possibly making an upset here with them being at home again.
Yeah, you're talking about a 52.5 over under. This is going to be a very high scoring affair. And again, Dallas defense, they came up big last week, but against an Eagles team that it's a weekly thing to mention that the Eagles offense pisses everybody off. But shout out AJ Brown last week.
I'm being a Bills fan, man.
Players to watch. I'm highlighting Tyquan Thornton here. The secondary for Dallas still does not scare me. And Tyquan, he had a goose egg against the Colts. But if there's a game for a Tyquan Thornton deep bomb, it's against Dallas.
I would say, that's pretty true. Very, very a guy dependent on those, like sort of like to me how Trey Tucker sort of was at the beginning of the year. I'm going with Terrence Ferguson, typically a pretty reliable target for Dak right now, guy who draws a lot of attention, but also just a big body, a guy you can trust, throughout. A lot of times when you try to get him the ball, that he will most likely at least make the catch. And also big end zone guy for them. Dallas can get within the 20 throughout some of those drives. Definitely think he's a guy to watch to possibly get a touchdown. But yeah, he's been pretty consistently a good part of their utilization, and could be again just this week with Kansas City still being a pretty decent defense. So.
And one other thing I want to mention about the Cowboys, Dak 2-5 against the spread on Thanksgiving. So, let's go Chiefs. But you disagree, but whatever.
I hope we would just have a better overall pick of the week record than last week. So
yes, that is true. Now talking the final game on Thursday night, the return of Joe Burrow in Baltimore against the Ravens. Line opened up at 7.5. We've seen it now go down to 7. A game where, same thing, Nick and I both on the Ravens. You're taking Cincinnati here. I saw that Burrow is 1-6 versus Lamar all time, and I think the game could be close, but at the end of the day, this Bengals, Joe Burrow's back, but that Bengals defense is still a welcome mat.
That defense is. It is what it is, man. But also, we just saw against the Pats, they were able to offensively put up a fight there. And, when I'm looking at now this Bengals game, like maybe the Bengals' chances of making the playoffs are pretty much out of sight, out of mind. But you heard what Burrow said. He's not going to at all sit the season, especially if he's healthy. He even said, I read in an article, a headline was like, Burrow issues a harrowing response to critics about his season. And he said 2 words, he's back. And posted like a picture in like some like Akron or like some LeBron thing, and I was just like, cornball. But
are you talking about the old picture of him in the LeBron jersey?
That might have been it.
Oh my god!
Like he had some caption saying like he's back, and like the media was just like, Burrow issues a harrowing response to critics about his health. Now while Nico takes care of a dog issue. I want to highlight for this Bengals game just a lot on how getting Jamar back this week, and Burrow, very, when I say lethal, I mean just a dangerous quarterback receiver threat there. Overall, I think the Ravens, as Lamar catches back up to speed, have shown flashes of becoming an offense that we kind of expected out of them. Henry had a pretty good week last week, but I think this game is a little bit too competitive to just say that Baltimore is going to cover this by a touchdown. I mean, it's at -7 right now. I don't think it's really going to move too much past that. But to say by a touchdown makes me a little bit worried compared to how unpredictable right now the Bengals can be if they get Burrow, when they get Burrow and Chase back at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, Jamar obviously coming back after last week, and the Ravens themselves. I mean, we saw them, they didn't another hook last week when we were talking about a bad week of picks, but at 13.5, they end up winning by 13. And Jim Harbaugh is 23-12 as a head coach after kind of the same stat as Dan Campbell in a way, but 23-12 against the spread after and against the spread loss.
Now similarly, I know we don't have a stat for this, but like Harbaugh and the Ravens, rough season, but you don't think Zach Taylor's absolutely fighting for his job right now? Like every win for the rest of this year is big. Every win shows that he could.
Oh, sorry. I was going to add that if this is any other franchise, I think a coach could get fired. But we're talking about the Bengals here, who kept. I'm blanking on his first name, but Coach Lewis. Let me look this up. Bengals, just because I can get the name right. But we were talking about a guy that was there for like 13 years. Marvin Lewis, thank you. He's there for 13 years, never won a playoff game. The Bengals are cheap. We've always known that, and I don't think they're going to try to pay 2 head coaches. Zach Taylor could be here for like another 10 years.
Fair, but I think the representation of just this season is going to be like how you can kind of put things back together if you get your core back, and especially in a game like against Baltimore where neither team has exactly been impressive. This is one that they could maybe start to get some things on a track as we come to a close, but.
Yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting one. Glad to see Burrow back, and primetime games, divisional games, an over under of 51.5. Which kind of shocked me because again, usually those are a little bit lower scoring, but I
think that's a trap.
Yeah, it's gonna be scary, but again, I love all 3 of these matchups. This is an exciting week of football, and not only do we have 3 games on Thursday, but we do have our 3rd ever Black Friday shopping bowl.
Do you want to talk about the players to watch for that?
Oh yes, forgot to highlight.
Very good.
I have Mark Andrews. I mean, Hunter Henry last week, we saw that absolutely smash. And the Bengals, if you go week by week, I think the lowest, I'd say, value that a tight end has gotten against them this year was, I think, 4 catches for like 60 yards. So I think Mandrews is going to probably have a solid game. He's going to have some like silly little touchdown. That's how it always works.
Andrews, similar to, well, not similar at all, but going to the opposite side for the Bengals. T. Higgins right now is currently, I think he's doubtful to play on Thursday because it's a pretty quick turnaround from Sunday for him to clear concussion protocol. But that allows a man that we always see in the field pretty often, and then he makes a catch. We're like, who the fuck is that? But especially in the last week and a half now, he's made a little bit of relevancy as a guy who can just pick up a couple more targets, a little bit more attention. Andre Iosivas stepped up while T was taking the lead role, but now with Jamar coming back, they're down T. He's now taking wide receiver 2 role. A guy who in random instances you will see catch a touchdown, get some deep plays, get some important drives late. Like he's a guy who gets midfield to then red zone type of touches, and with T. Higgins being out, sure the Jamar and Joe Burrow connection is back, but I think he could also be worth a look at. It's possibly a streaming option for a flex.
Yeah, no T. Higgins out on a Bengals offense with Burrow. He's in line for good production. But going back, you have a good name for this, like a Black Friday bowl, the shopping bowl, the
bowl.
The buy everything online because Black Friday deals probably started like 3 days earlier bowl.
What about the Cyber Monday bowl, like when we get to Monday?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, like I said, Black Friday deals, they start nowadays. They start like so far early. Like you don't get that rush anymore of like wanting to like camp out at the mall or anything.
You had the rush. Did you ever actually do that?
There was one time that I went to the mall at like was like 8 in the morning, and it was a free for all, you know. And like nowadays, it's just not worth it. We're sounding old by saying this, but
Dude, the videos you see of just people like the minute like Best Buy opens its doors and it's just the red or not the red. No, it's the opposite of parting the Red Sea. The sea collapses. They all just fucking flood
and that's
into
what
the store.
that's what I want to see. You know, like Black Friday was always known as like the one day sales. You saw people, you know, like playing tug of war for like an Xbox. You know, like I want to see a couple hands get thrown.
Imagine like the last like guy getting into the Best Buy, like the very back of the line. He was able to squeeze his way in, and the shelves are cleared, and he's like, it's like a USB-C charger, and you're like,
I gotta get something while I'm here. I gotta make the trip worth it.
I want to go here or something. But then you find out it's like the one thing that's actually not on sale.
It's like, oh yeah, buy one get one actually, and there's none left. There's just one.
Yeah, you have to pay full price. But yeah, Black Friday shopping bull. We'll call it that for this year.
Yeah, Bears, Eagles, -7 in Philadelphia.
It's a game I almost wanted to make my pick of the week, man.
I was thinking that too. Like, if we're talking belt to ass, I think, you know, last week I talked about Chicago. There's a game at some point that it's going to happen where they're going to come back to reality. And again, we talked about how the Eagles' offense hasn't been too crazy, but the Bears' defense is right at the bottom of the barrel when we're talking about the Bengals too. And Caleb has done a lot to keep this team in relevance, but last week we saw him, you know, push, you know, well, when we had 2.5 on the Bears, it did cash, but by game time it was at 3. But you beat up Mason Rudolph Steelers by 3. You put up you allowed 28 points to Mason Rudolph, and that dumbass mustache.
Man, I almost thought Rodgers was like on the field, but like prime Rodgers, like just the amount of like efficiency coming out of Mason Rudolph of all people. I was like, I thought Pittsburgh was gonna get not shelled, but like fought that out of him. Like, damn.
Yeah.
Maybe that bombed by Myles Garrett, you know, put him in the right headset for the rest of his every start from there on out.
You knew Rodgers was pissed because if there's any guy that owns Chicago, it is Rodgers, and he's
oh my God, yeah, you're right.
Probably the one game that he's really upset that he does miss.
Yep.
But a bad defense versus a very good Eagles defense, and an offense that, I mean, we saw AJ Brown finally get it moving last week. Nick Sirianni is 8-14 against the spread after a loss, which doesn't necessarily help our case there, but something I thought was a little interesting to note there. But a Bears team that offensively should be healthy, but when in doubt, I think this offense is not going to be able to do enough to just make up for the fact that their defense is going to get walked all over.
Both that, and I honestly don't think that they're really that much of a threat. I know they've had a bunch of wins of late, but you know, this was my biggest point about calling the Bears frauds, is that their wins have come against teams that are not strong. You know, first off, they started the season off with 2 losses against Minnesota and then against Detroit, where they got destroyed 52-21. Then, you know, they went on this nice little win streak of just 1 loss with Baltimore, but the teams they beat, Dallas, you know, already with a bad defense. Vegas, really not that competitive, and they only won by 5. Sorry, 5 by 1.
It's a compliment to Vegas. You can call Vegas shit. You can call them whatever you want.
But Commanders, you know, a team that, you know, I think even with Jaden Daniels, like the team overall didn't have Terry either. They won by a point there. I think that's actually a game we put money on for the Bears to win. So shout out for that week. But then they beat New Orleans. They lose to Baltimore. They beat Cincinnati, the Giants, the Vikings as of recent with 9. Not JJ, and then some random win against the Steelers, of which that was incredibly close compared to what we all thought it was going to be. I said in the notes, this is their first biggest test since Detroit, and you know Philly's pissed about, you know, letting up 24 straight. God, I think they're coming out with some fire here, and I don't think the Bears are a competitive team against a contender.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the record and it looks great. But I think if you ask most people around the NFL world to rank the NFC North, the Bears are still 3rd behind Lions and Packers in some order.
They got a tough schedule coming up too. You know, Philly this week and then Green Bay next week, going against Cleveland, Green Bay again, San Francisco. McCaffrey's hard to stop, obviously, with a bad defense. We saw what just happened to Carolina, who has an okay defense for the most part. And then they finish with Detroit. Like, that's a rough way for them to end the season now, playing some of their hardest matchups.
Yeah, their win line is set at 10.5 right now, so it's they're not expecting too much there. But yeah,
that's crazy accurate though.
Now back into our regularly scheduled program of Sunday football. the 1 o'clock games. We have Shadur Sanders making his second career NFL start, first Browns quarterback since 1999 to win in their debut. We mentioned last week 0-17. Now there's a 1. And I don't know about you. He had that throw to Isaiah Bond that was really nice, but outside of that, there really wasn't like he didn't really do much. You know, I don't think that the Jeudy or like his second biggest completion to Jerry Jeudy, he was wide open. And also, shout out Jerry Jeudy for the dumbest move I've ever seen.
We were watching that together, and I swear to God, I was like the little like kindergarten high step, and then just gets the ball punched out from behind.
Like
that was good.
He makes that move, and also there's 2 guys in front of him. Like the high step, where are you going with that to begin with?
Yeah,
you know,
the only way to go in that situation is out of bounds.
But you have that large play to Jeudy, who was booty ass open. You have the Bond throw, which, to give credit to Schroeder, like that was a good throw on the run, and like the Browns really haven't had an explosive play, it felt like, all year. But his next largest play was a screen pass. You know, they weren't really telling him to do much. And going against Kyle Shanahan, like we're talking belt to ass in the last matchup, but I think this is another scenario.
You want to know the funniest part about that whole win for the Browns is that passing leader, rushing leader, receiving leader, all are Raiders.
Yeah. That,
285 passing yards. Genti with 50 rushing yards was apparently the most in that game, and Tyler Lockett coming in with 62 receiving yards it's all Raiders across the board. You would have thought that they probably should have won that game, but damn, 2 possessions is how they lost. Is just nuts against a performance like that.
You know, we had jokes about like that being the poop game of the week, or Atlanta versus New Orleans, and God, I kind of wanted to like just like watch paint dry, trying to like see both those games at the same time. That was
Thank God for Red Zone. Imagine like you're just a guy who lives in Vegas and like you don't have Red Zone and you can only watch the local channel and it's your Raiders and you're just stuck with that for like 2.5 hours.
Oh my God. Yeah. If you're a Raiders fan, like you watch the Browns play the most simple offense of all time. Like they ran Wildcat more than I've seen by anybody this year. And it was just not entertaining football in the slightest. But with that being said, the Niners-Browns game opened up at 6. Lions gone down to 4.5, showing that maybe there's a lot of talk on Cleveland here, but I can't see it. I think, Purdy didn't necessarily look great against Carolina, but they took care of business, and I think we could see a very similar game script of like a 20-9 win for the Niners.
Yeah, I think that honestly is pretty spot on. Outside of maybe McCaffrey getting one of his, probably one of his more difficult matchups against the defense this year, overall, like it's going to be pretty low scoring. 40.5 already tells the story there. They're not really projecting anything crazy to happen in this game, but in this situation, the better team wins now. Plus, you said it went down to 4.5.
Yeah.
Okay. I still like that for the Niners. I honestly like that more. I'm not sure.
Well, obviously, we're all in the Niners. Yeah. I'll take another 1.5.
let's take it down to -1.5. But I don't know what really sways that. But yeah, I still go Niners here by a mile.
Players to watch of this game. Oh, and we forgot players to watch in the last game. Funny enough, I'm on Dallas Goedert for the Bears Eagles game. Goddard last week, I thought he was going to get a little bit more production than he did, but. The Bears defense, they struggle everywhere, but specifically the linebackers are dog shit, and that's where I think Goddard's really going to eat.
Nick and I going with Hurts here. I think throughout a season of which he's had so many throwing woes in a way, he gets a pretty good pretty good defense to play against here. And you would have thought the same with Dallas, of which they still put up 21. But just another chance to get people more involved.
You having a stroke?
I was trying to say IE. Yeah, that's what I meant. IE, AJ Brown.
Oh, okay. I was like, what is he talking about?
Quick hand down on the keyboard and it's like a swipe. No. IE, AJ Brown. I think Hurts gets another chance here. And, that includes Goddard, a guy that, a lot of times is a pretty reliable target for them that they go to pretty frequently. And yeah, last week I was surprised at the low volume as well.
Yeah, I don't want to glaze myself off my players to watch last week, but I had a couple guys get 2 touchdowns. Like Derrick Henry had 2. Judkins was my guy last week. He got 2. AJ Brown 25. Rashee Rice had 140 yards last week.
I will say each Victory Monday that we make, like there's a clip of you in it. Like you can't get through a Victory Monday without seeing or hearing Nico's
I'm
voice.
yapping too much, that's why. But speaking to that, my player to watch, it's not too flashy, but there's not many people I like in this Browns-Niners game. Obviously, McCaffrey's that guy, but I'm taking Kittle here, as is Brooklyn. Last week against Carolina, we saw 10 targets. You saw, especially with Purdy coming back, he's as reliable, or is his go-to guy. So I think Kittle's. There's not too many people I like from this game, but I think Kittle has another good performance.
Yeah, offensively, outside of Kittle, wideouts, Parasol coming back, like there's still got to be a relationship developed there and a little bit more consistency. So while that starts to build up, maybe it starts to ramp up a little bit more this week. I still like Kittle to really get a lot of like those "I trust you" type of throws.
Exactly. So through 4 right now, you have 2 underdogs in Dallas and Cincinnati, and outside of that, I've been on all favorites. It's nothing too flashy there, but our next
Here's
matchup
another one.
of Texans at the Colts, line opened at 3.5, moved to 4.5. C.J. Stroud looking like he's going to be playing. Daniel Jones dealing with a slight injury here, but maybe you call it an overreaction from Thursday Night Football, but I'm on the Texans, man. I mean, that defense is disgusting. I mean,
It's not an overreaction, dude. I'm with you.
8 sacks against Josh Allen, against an O-line was supposed to be really good. And this is a team that we've seen hold their own with Davis Mills. I mean, you're talking about covering, I think, covered the spread in at least 2 of his 3 starts. And an Indianapolis team that they're starting to come back to reality. The Chiefs game in the fourth quarter, being up 11, they had 3 consecutive 3-and-outs, and they kind of let Kansas City get back into that game. But the common theme with the Colts is if Jonathan Taylor can't get 20 carries, they can't necessarily win the game. Like, you have to force Daniel Jones to throw, and that's where things get bad. And I think he's going to be in hell. I think he's going to get pressured the whole game.
It's going to be tough, and for a while, like I think earlier on, especially in our first couple episodes, Daniel Jones was the least sacked quarterback in the NFL. Going up to now, I'm not saying things have changed in terms of he's gotten sacked a shit ton, but definitely going to take a beating this week. We saw exactly what Houston can do with their tremendous rushing defense, and also we know that Jones under pressure is not entirely a great passer. He doesn't perform too well when he's actually pressured right now. And from what we just saw against Buffalo, Houston knows that they knocked a top AFC target off the list, and the Colts, who else a better team to go back to back, possibly getting a win there against 2 of what you might call the tougher teams right now in the league. Just out of respect for the Houston Texans, I absolutely think that they could shut down the Colts this week. I don't think the Colts passing game is anything too tremendous, just all in all. Tyler Warren's been good. Pittman's been decent. Josh Downs, nothing crazy. Alec Pierce has his moments, definitely has his big moments, but this game's really going to come down to what can JT do. And if we see the Texans play anyway the same that they did against Buffalo, I think I think the Colts could definitely take a loss here, which would be huge for the Texans.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, on the spreadsheet, both you and I are on the Texans, Nick on the Colts. So, I mean, he would definitely give us some shit for that, because you look when making the sheet this week, I was thinking about the game that I might look back on and be like, oh, maybe I did lean the wrong way. A Colts team that on paper has been very efficient, has been the top team in the AFC, but this is the number 1 defense in the league, and they made Josh Allen cry. So.
And it's interesting to look at this game, quarterback-wise. I know Stroud is in line to possibly to be able to play this week, but Davis Mills shocked the hell out of me, man. Like, he just plays sound, controlled football.
It's not electric by any means.
I know, but that's what won them the game against the Bills, was the fact that he's not forcing nothing. And overall the play calling in that game was great. They weren't trying to do anything too dangerous, and they let the defense do the work of getting the ball back, and they just slowly beat the Bills down. And I think that could be a big problem against Indianapolis this week.
Hey, if you need a field goal, go call out Davis Mills. Get that white boy on the field, but don't ask him for too many touchdowns. But
he had one throw against the Bills where it was, I would say, a 10-yard pass, and I forget who caught the pass, but butt booty ass naked, man. And I was just like, I'm from the Buffalo side, just like, God, like the passing defense is the only thing defensively you have going for you. Um,
But they've
it's just
also
this is a crazy game to watch.
he also missed a couple pretty big throws. Like there was a touchdown to Higgins that he just entirely underthrew. So I think he gets
Was
the
it the one
job
that hit
done.
off defensive back's back?
Yeah, yeah, in
Yeah.
the end zone. But yeah, both of us on Houston. Nick taking the Colts. Our players to watch of this game. I'm on Tyler Warren. The Texans, they run primarily zone, and you kind of saw that with like Khalil Shakir last week, where like he had a lot of those targets just in the middle of the field, kind of like close to the line of scrimmage, and that's where Tyler Warren kind of eats middle of the field. I'm not saying touchdown by any means, but I do think this is a guy that he's gonna walk out of this game with, I would say, maybe like 6 or 8 catches.
6 to 8, definitely not 7. Well, that's always a solid choice going Tyler Warren. Big target for them, but I'm gonna lean Woody Marks here. He's completely taken over that backfield in terms of just his carries, his touches. And every week, he gets enough opportunities that he could take or make a big week for himself. So looking at this game against Indianapolis, I believe I'm not sure exactly if their defensive line is fully healthy, but assuming that if Stroud is back from concussion protocol, or especially if he's not, Woody Marks is still going to be heavily involved. That's all I can really say about that.
He was really efficient, or I wouldn't say crazy efficient, but he did the right moves against Buffalo, and he's kind of separating himself to be that RB1 from Chubb. But another game that I think you might be a little biased off of the absolute belt to ass that we saw on Sunday Night Football. But the Rams going to Carolina plus 10, which they've been good against the spread this year. We're talking about 6-5 through the against the spread. But this Rams team that just took care of business. I mean, granted the Bucs were pretty beat up. Baker gets hurt. But you're talking about a team that is just great everywhere. The run game.
That game was over in the first half, dude. Like we watched that whole first half, and by the end of it, like literally, the over on Matt Stafford's passing yards was like more than halfway. The spread was like at -7, and I wasn't even sweating it. Like that game was over from before they even hit halftime.
Yeah, like both Brooklyn and I, we took a couple props in that game, and both on Stafford and like Puka, and our worries, with like 5 minutes into the second half was, I don't know if they're going to be on the field for much longer.
Right, are they going to play them? And interestingly enough, they finished the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, they played the entire game. No, like if there's any Stetson Bennett like moment, that was the game, and they're like, nah. Yeah,
His mom's just cheering like, honey, get in there. He's going to get in. I swear. They're up so much. And then you see Stafford like take a kneel, and you're like.
Jimmy Garoppolo's family is they like see the score and they're like, oh my god, Jimmy's gonna get in the game, oh my god, and then they like turn it on and they just see like the camera on the sidelines of just him watching. That was his 15 seconds of that game.
Commentary was like for Sean McVay was like literally like, if I'm Sean, I'm pulling these guys off the field. I don't know what they're still doing in, and I'm like, but hey, they walk out unscathed. No injuries there. Good for them.
Game, it's like when you play MLB The Show and you're up like 7 runs, and the broadcast booth, they just start like rambling like random shit. They're like, oh, you get a haircut, or like, oh, I'm collecting sports cards, and like that's what this game was like. It was over so early. And it goes to show just how dominant the Rams are. I mean, all 3 of us are on the Rams. I don't know if there's too much more to highlight. Carolina's offense is so confusing. It's Rico Dowdle, and then like if you get rid of the Falcons games, the 34-0 win against the Falcons and Bryce Young's 450 passing yards against the Falcons, I think we look at this Panthers team so much differently. We look at their wins as fluke wins more than like legit.
That last game he threw for over 300 yards. That was a fluke game. Like I honestly don't think he's that type of quarterback.
Yeah, and
definitely not day in, day out. Like he's just not that guy.
And definitely not against the Rams. But our players to watch, both of you and I got the same guy. Colby Parkinson. No Tyler Higbee. He emerged. You thought we were going to see a little bit more Terrence Ferguson, but Parkinson was getting a decent amount of targets last week. And funny enough, I know this is not your consecutive, but of what we've talked about, I've name dropped 4 tight ends in a row as players to watch. So we're rooting for that extra lineman this week. That's for sure.
Yeah, last 3 weeks he's gotten a touchdown in every game, and especially with Higbee being out, he's making the most out of that role, and you can really only expect that to pick up as he and Stafford, who Stafford's good at making connections with his receivers. That's just another target for him.
I fully agree. I don't want to speak too much on this next matchup because, God, I mean, it's not poop game of the week, but it's close.
We're getting close to it, yeah.
Talking about the Saints traveling down to Miami, line of 5.5 in favor of Miami. All 3 of us on it because, I decided, I've said a lot of things about Saints fans, and I ended up taking them against Kirk Cousins. I was like, I know the Falcons' defense is good, but how much can Kirk really do to keep them in that game? And Tyler Sucks lived up to the name. That was also a terrible, terrible watch. When you're talking, I think there was like a 5-minute drive for the Saints, and it just ended in the end zone without a touchdown. It was ugly. Whereas a Miami team, they're coming off a bye. They were moving the ball incredibly well, and it's a Saints team that is not good defensively. 5.5, a little steep. I think it's the largest spread that the Dolphins have had this year. But being at home,
really,
I can double check it, but I'm pretty sure that it is.
I'm not saying that's nuts. They obviously haven't been a good team all year, but New Orleans is just so bad.
Yeah, no.
In that now with Kamara out, this is their biggest spread margin.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, hell of a team to have it against. I think this could possibly be bumped up by before game time to maybe 6.5, maybe 8. No, maybe 7. But
3-1 against the spread in their last 4.
Dolphins.
Yeah. So
now they just. I feel like they just get a fucking fastball down the middle this week.
Yeah.
You get a Kamara-less Saints team and.
And Chris Olave is a little banged up. He's probably going to play, but he's not 100%.
And, Miami's relatively healthy for what they have. McDaniel being a decent coach, this might be ugly.
Yeah, no, could be another belt to ass scenario, but I think the Dolphins take care of business. We all do. My player to watch, funny enough, it's on the Saints. Devin Neal. I think he's a good running back. He hasn't been able to stay necessarily healthy, but this is his opportunity. And I know that the Kamara, he hasn't necessarily been great as a rusher. He's always, great receiving back, but hasn't been too much of a YPC type of running back. And I think this is a good opportunity for Devin Neal against a Miami front that isn't very good. Is it going to be an electric game? Not at all, because I think the Dolphins take care of business pretty easily. But I see this as a game where Devin Neal will, he's going to get his carries. But I think if you're in a PPR league, this is where he eats.
And obviously with the opportunity he has this week, it could definitely be a player to watch. I wonder what his percentage of pickup was on the waivers, but I am highlighting Jalen Waddle in a game that really, for me, outside of Devin Neal being a pretty decent snag there's not really much else to watch out for. I think for Miami especially, their guys are going to go out there and do their thing against the defense that's been non-competitive and an offense that's also been equally as non-competitive. And Waddle's been been a guy who week by week you can pretty consistently trust to get his share of targets, possible big plays and stuff like that. This one's kind of just one of those games where you think he's going to have plenty of opportunities to make some bigger plays.
And moving forward, another game, all 3 of us are on the favorite. Why? It's my favorite team in the league, the Tennessee Titans, which, if I have to give credit where credit is due, and it's not going to be that Arizona game, but credit where credit's due, they faced a line of 13 against the Seahawks, and they end up losing by 6, which shocked me by an immense amount. But a Jacksonville team, OT thriller against the Cardinals. I'm not scared for Jacksonville in the slightest. Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be the one thing that, if there's anything that ruins this for the Jags, it is Trevor Lawrence. He's had some very sloppy plays of late. But if there's any time for a rebound, it's going to be at Tennessee.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, this is probably the best case scenario for Lawrence this week. Going against a team like Tennessee, but also getting your weapons back. You got a developing connection with Myers, and Brian Thomas is supposedly coming back this week. ETN's been on a roll. Overall, like, this is a game where you should see the best of Trevor Lawrence this season. And with that defense being what it is and being a big threat for takeaways and like not like neck and neck, not entirely like with the Cardinals, I believe, for interceptions, but pretty up there for a while. They were leading the league with interceptions. Playing against Cam Ward, gonna see a lot of opportunities for some turnovers here, and that should give Lawrence plenty of plays, but plenty of time on the field there to just deepen that connection with both Myers and possibly bounce back for BTJ. No, he had a rough start to the beginning of the season, but this one seems pretty easy.
I saw this thing on Twitter that I thought was hilarious. There's a fantasy league where they include yard, like every yard for kick returns and punt returns. So that goes like, even though, because I think in standard fantasy right now, if somebody scores a punt return or kick return touchdown, you get the touchdown added, but you don't get the yards. Yeah. And they decided to add the yards to it.
Insane.
So
that's got to be such a high scoring play.
So in that league, DK of the Titans is the number 1 overall player in like scoring wise because of that rule.
He's been good, dude, and for a team that has absolutely nothing really good to look at, he's been a major bright spot. Cam Ward's rookie season, like, you can't really, I don't think you can really discredit Cam for being thrown into a team like the Titans, of which you're one of your veteran receivers literally just says like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, I mean, when you're surrounded by shit, like one golden goose isn't going to be able to clean it up.
Crazy. Then with Pollard's been pretty mid all year as well, and then DK comes out of nowhere and just starts to become this guy for them, and I really like that about Tennessee.
But don't glaze DK too much, because you're talking about how the offense is bad overall. Like, DK's been better when he's gotten the ball off a kick than from a pass.
And that's fair. But I think, really for that offense in general, he's been like one of the only bright spots for them. And I honestly don't root against the Titans, man. I feel like they're just a team that's been put. They're a team that's just been put in a shit situation, and it's like me watching the Nets right now. There's no way for them to dig it out at the current moment. You got to give time for things to develop, and it sucks to watch, because a guy like Cam Ward, number 1 pick, being thrown into just ass. Like, you look at Will Levis, same team. It's just bad.
No, there's not much around. And with all that being said, though, my player to watch is, funny enough, Cam Ward. We saw his first top 15 quarterback performance last week, and the Jacksonville Jags, like, the defense, it's been very good. They've dealt with the run pretty well. They haven't let up necessarily too much in most areas of the field, but against quarterbacks, they're a good matchup in fantasy. So I think Cam Ward is going to finish in the top 15. I'm not expecting crazy things. I think Jacksonville takes care of business, but I think through with a little bit through the air, a little bit with the legs, that he should be in the top 15.
Fair enough. And this week I picked him last week, and I'm going to pick him again because I really like what I'm seeing from him. Jacoby Myers, ever since he's been put on the Jags, I showed some flashes of a guy that we wanted him to be on the Raiders, even though he asked out pretty early on in the season. But scored a touchdown last week, 84 yards in that game. 50 yards in that game, 84% of the snap share. 50 yards in that game with a touchdown, and I just think that he might become a guy, especially even with Brian Thomas coming back. I think he's going to become a guy that Lawrence might look to when it comes to big play moments, red zone targets, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, BTJ's had some butterfingers this year, so Myers
afraid of contact.
Yeah, he's kind of like scared of everything as that a receiver should be good at, but that's why they went out and grabbed Jacoby.
Fair enough.
Poop game of the week, everybody. I don't know about you, but I do not want to be seated to watch Kirk Cousins versus Tyrod Taylor, but it's happening. But would
you rather watch this game or like a full episode of Jeopardy?
Jeopardy. I think there'd be more. There's a little bit more interaction there. Like I'll see I'll see a question. Granted, I think 80% of those questions on Jeopardy, I got no fucking clue. And then I don't know. Every time I watch Jeopardy and they get an answer right, I get mad at them because I'm like, how do how do you study for this? How do you why do you know this?
Yeah, if you ever thought like the SAT is difficult, you gotta study like 1700 or no, before 1700, you gotta study like 800 Greek mythology and know the answers to who was Bartholomew the Third's 15th cousin.
Yeah, ask them a question about Fortnite. See how much they get right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But back to ball. Kirk Cousins versus Tyrod Taylor. We have the Falcons at the Jets. Jets plus 2.5, and after a lot of favorites, a lot of us being in agreement for most of this, you and I back on opposite sides. You and Nick taking the Falcons. I'm on the Jets here. The Jets, surprisingly enough, are in the top 10 when it comes to against the spread records. They've surprised us week in and week out, and this is a game for them where the Falcons defense is good, but Kirk wasn't incredible last week. We still don't know if Drake London's going to play. I think it's leaning towards a no. And the Jets, they figure it out. The special teams has been really good, as crazy as that is. But at 2.5, a total of 39.5, it's not going to be flashy by any means. But I could see a 17-13 Jets win.
I'm not calling you crazy for that prediction at all. I think Atlanta, if they do win this game, which I hope they do, it's going to come by the way of Bijan and some Tyler Algier, rushes within the 20. Overall, Kirk's such an unpredictable wild card in my opinion. He either does absolutely nothing or he goes out there and has a mid quarterback day, but just enough to get a win. Kind of like Davis Mills in a way. I like Atlanta here just because their defense is pretty decent, and especially passing defense wise. If you look at now the Jets, overall, what are they doing? They got Tyrod leading the charge, and maybe it wasn't the worst case scenario last week, even though they didn't come out of there with a win. But wide receiver room completely shaken up still with Garrett on IR. Breece Hall obviously going to get a lot of workload here, but at the same time, if you're the Jets, you kind of know your season's over.
You don't want to win it. Well, the front office doesn't want you to win, but the players are gonna, obviously want you to put everything.
This is the opposite of the Madden situations where it's the front office isn't that losing is associated with your name, and it's the front office is stop scoring.
We want that damn quarterback.
In this game, it's a non-competitive Jets offense, which surprises you from time to time, and I think a lot of their wins this year have just come by the way of just ugly football, and especially against some of those better teams offensively, Offensively, they haven't been able to do enough to keep, the defense has to keep coming back onto the field. But against Atlanta, I think Atlanta's a better defense to kind of shut that down in a lot of situations there. And overall, talent-wise, I think Atlanta's a little bit better. You have two onks at quarterback this week.
Yeah, I mean, a common occurrence this year, it seems. But
I wouldn't really say that, between Atlanta and New York, that one has a particularly better offense this week.
Yeah, if you exclude the Bengals game, you look at this Jets schedule, and it's 2 losses in a row, but it was they held Baltimore, they covered there. I mean, 13 points. It's not you can't victory lap it necessarily, but better than what I expected. New England.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
New England. I mean, it didn't seem like New England was sweating it necessarily for most of the game, but at points it was if they have one serviceable drive, it could have been a lot more interesting. And then the Bengals game, an insane shootout, but you look at the 2 before that, you lose to Denver and Carolina, but you give up 13. It's a team that I don't want to give credit to, but with Kirk Cousins on the other side, I think there's an opportunity.
I think we've talked about it a lot. The Jets defense isn't entirely as bad as those scores look. It's been a large part of that the offense really just can't get anything going. Kind of to help your case, but still not going to change my pick. Tyrod outplayed Lamar last week.
Well, you could say outplayed when you look at the box score, but at the end of the day, Lamar led a team to a 13-point victory and didn't necessarily
Lamar
have to
led
do
a team, or
much.
Derrick Henry led a team.
Exactly. But players to watch, I like Mason Taylor in this matchup. Kind of same thing. Falcons, they give up a lot to the tight end position. They're good everywhere else, but the tight end, it has been the opportunity. And yeah, I don't think Mason Taylor gets a target or a catch that's more than 15 yards, but he might get like 4 of those, and that's serviceable at the tight end position.
In a similar way, I'm going with John Mechie here with the Jets. The Jets receiving room is so like sporadic, so random. No one really has an established like favorite target. No true wide receiver one. But out of all the names on that depth chart, of which it's getting real thin right now, Mechie's been a guy who's been able to produce for them. And maybe against the Patriots, only had 3 catches, but one of those ended up being a touchdown. And then against Baltimore, one of those ended up being a touchdown. He got 7 targets in that game. He caught 6. He caught 6 of his 6 targets that he caught out of the 7 total. 6 out of 7.
Okay. Do the motion.
So
Do the motion
for a touchdown. But yards per catch in that game, averaged 10, and overall at 65 yards. Like, I think this is a guy you could keep your eye on. And as that, I'm not gonna say that wide receiver room is still developing, because I think it's gonna be kind of split. But it's a guy that obviously is earning some trust in the red zone, and a guy who you can possibly look at to maybe make some bigger plays as the Jets again say kind of goodbye to their season.
I can see the script. I just said 17-13, but something's just like going over my mind right now. I don't know.
You had a sudden reaction.
I don't know what's about to happen, but I'm pretty sure that John Mechie and Mason Taylor are going to combine for like 6 touchdowns. I think Tyrod's just going to be airing this out. This is going to be Tyrod might get a supermax after this game for all we know.
It's not hard to beat the option who was there before him. So,
but moving forward, Brooklyn's pick of the week.
This one's gonna sound a little crazy, and following the Pats game, I kind of like told myself that I really want to try to stay away from those games that are trying to say we're gonna decide by a touchdown or more. But this game looked so interesting to me in the way that the Seahawks, they've been on fire all year, and they took a loss to the Rams, but you can't really fault them. There's a really difficult team to go up against. Now they are playing against not 9. JJ McCarthy, not 9 McCarthy, but it looks like this week they are playing against the Minnesota Vikings led by Max Brosmer.
Which is not the first time his name has been mentioned on this podcast.
No, it's not, but this is the first time he has been the starter. And I believe the stat I read is that he has only thrown the ball, or maybe it was completions, but either thrown or completed 8 passes in his career. Granted, he is a backup. You're not going to see much of him at any point. But this is a guy that, he's a rookie. You can't kind of go into this expecting too much from him in a Vikings offense that's already kind of just shattered at the moment. They got just stomped on by Green Bay. Now, this spread currently at -11.5, and from the jumps that we saw it take from the initial opening spread, insane. Went from, I believe at the beginning of the year, just looking way down the line, the spread was at -1.5, but it went from that to 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, 10.5, all the way up to 11.5. So you're banking on them to cover by more than a touchdown, almost 2 possessions. And for me, I do definitely see that in a game against Minnesota's passing defense. Maybe can hold their own, but their offense can absolutely get nothing going at the moment. And if you put a rookie quarterback in there who has proven nothing as well, there's just I don't see how the Vikings can really put up a fight. You're not really going to see him air it out to Justin Jefferson too much, because I don't think they're going to be in situations where they're going to allow him to just kind of toss bombs like that. Could be a sort of like a trust of what you saw like out of Shador, where they just say, F it, throw some checkdowns, make it all safe. But at the same time Seattle's defense is pretty top tier. Now, with JJ, if he does end up being out, and even if he doesn't, he hasn't been all too good. Highlighting the Seahawks, underwhelming win against Tennessee, but that offense has still been incredibly efficient. JSN has just been on a ridiculous tear right now, record-wise. I forgot what the record he's on pace to break is.
Are you saying JSN?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's at 1,300 yards, and the record is Calvin Johnson at 1964.
Yeah, and he's going to come pretty close to that by the end of the year, which is just nuts to see. JSN's been great, and I want to also, a lot of talk has been around the Seahawks and then just in their involvement of the running game. Ken Walker, Charbonnet maybe haven't been like the craziest, most efficient guys that you have seen. Especially Ken Walker, Ken Walker's taken a little bit of a decrease in value to me this year. But if we look at how the Packers just absolutely ran through the Vikings last week. Big game for two running backs who are decent in their own respect. I think that they're both starters on any other team. Good week to get that back going. 7th ranked defense for Seattle against, again, Brosmer, a guy who really hasn't shown anything that you can trust. This game is just going to be a pretty ugly show if you're a Vikings fan. I don't think the Vikings have any room to really run with the Seahawks.
No, I agree there. Although there were some doubts from me, especially after not covering last week against Tennessee. But Cam Ward actually played like showed.
He got a much more talented quarterback in Cam Ward than Max Brosmer. And yeah, a lucky return by DK kept that game a little bit closer. And I don't think you see as much of anything like that out of the Vikings.
I looked up Max Brosmer to see if there's anything interesting and stumbled upon like a Reddit post. And the comments are just like they're too good, man. There's one that said, "I think at this point Air Bud could replace JJ McCarthy," which that's incredible. There was one where was this one? Brosmer heads rise up. We've waited for too long for such a joy as this.
There's like 10 of them out there. All of which are his immediate family.
He's got a Reddit page, r/Max Brosmer. There are fans here. Then my favorite one that I've seen so far. This is definitely a very depressed Vikings fan. Quote, "This football team is like watching a clown car crash and all the clowns are piling out one by one. Just when you think there couldn't be any more clowns, one more crawls his way out."
And that's Max Brosmer.
That's just talking about the Vikings this year. But yeah, I mean the defense for Minnesota is still there. That's why like 11.5 is a little worrisome for me in some ways. But Brosmer, the Vikings they've been serviceable with JJ McCarthy, who's been one of the worst QBs we've seen like ever. Like to get this amount of opportunities, I got to bring this up. Shout out! I think Christian got a shout out a couple or at some point on this podcast, but he sent another thing that he saw on Twitter that I thought was super interesting, and it was comparing two players, which kind of ruined the effect here because it is going to be.
I think I heard this too actually on Instagram. Someone was talking about JJ McCarthy in comparison to some rookie quarterback who was drafted high up and who shit the bed, and that JJ is honestly playing worse than that.
Yeah, that player they were talking about was Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. So JJ McCarthy through his first 6 games, 900 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 10 picks, 20 sacks, passer rating of 57.9.
6 picks and 20 sacks.
6 touchdowns, 10 picks, 20 sacks.
6 touchdowns, 10 picks, 20. Oh.
And then you have Jamarcus Russell, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, 16 sacks, passer rating of 20 points higher.
The video I saw was these 3 guys on a pod talking about like mystery players. Player A with that stat line, and then player B with Jamarcus Russell's stat line. And who would you take? And everyone's just like, that's fucking terrible because both of the guys sucked. But you look at JJ McCarthy and that touchdown to interception and then to sack ratio is crazy compared to Jamarcus Russell, who's just overall not efficient from the looks of those stats. Yeah, and now you put a guy like Max Brosmer, a complete wild card of which you don't really expect too much good. Only way they win this is if, he somehow comes into this completely dialed in and Jettas gets the game of his life. But other than that, this is the kid. They're on the road. The Vikings are on the road against Seattle, against the Seattle team that is better than the Packers in my opinion. I'll give my score prediction. That'll be the last thing I say about this game. 35-10.
12 to nothing.
Oh.
No.
But it covers.
But it covers.
It does cover. But I think 35-10. I think Brosmer could probably, toss one lucky one up there to TJ Hawkinson of all people. But other than that.
Yeah,
no route to me that the Vikings ever come close.
for me, it's going to be my player to watch of this game is going to be Justin Jefferson. It's not flashy, but Brosmer is going to have to go to some type of safety blanket, and we haven't seen Jettas necessarily explode with McCarthy there. For Brosmer, I think the easy route is just you hit your open targets, you hit your go-to guy, and that's where I think it would be Jettas.
You know that meme of like Vegeta holding like the minion in his hands like a baby?
No.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I'll send it to you later. But there's like this like meme of like you know what Vegeta is, right?
Yes, yes.
It's so random. It's like Vegeta, big strong Saiyan guy holding like a minion from Despicable Me in like his arms as like a little baby. And I think that like that Vegeta is Justin Jefferson in this situation. Max Prosper is the minion.
Carry him to glory.
It's just like it's okay, come to me when you're scared type of thing, and it's just like, oh, this game is gonna be ugly. I think it's less than 2 touchdowns, but it is more than a possession, and I think that's definitely in line for Seattle.
Moving forward, we've got your favorite team in the NFL, the Los Angeles Chargers. They are at home against the Raiders. Line originally at 10, it's now at 9.5. Very ugly over under too. You're talking about a total of 41.5. Goes to show how much the casinos like the Raiders, because you're seeing a 10-point spread with 40 points in the game. That's not necessarily a crazy game script there, but a Raiders team that you kind of lose all hope on. It's Geno has struggled. The O-line sucks. They just fired their offensive coordinator, and Gentie's a little banged up too. So it doesn't look pretty. Like the Chargers, we know that the O-line isn't there. But I felt pretty safe taking them at 9.5 here. I think Herbert's just going to take care of business, and there's nothing I could really. If there's no Genty, there really isn't anything I could advocate for on this Raiders team. But with that being said, both you and Nick are on the Raiders. So what do you see that I don't?
Personally, I see a Chargers team that, with all the injuries that they had, especially when Joel initially went out before he came back and got re-injured, like that offensive line sucked. And you get a guy like Max Crosby coming in there who knows that Herbert's got a target on his back, and it's just going to be dangerous in terms of like what plays is he actually going to be able to set up. I think he's going to be on the run throughout a lot of this game. Vegas's defense, nothing to brag about, but it's definitely not one of the worst in the league. It's still sufficeable, and I know the Browns kind of somehow did what they did against them, but if they can pressure Herbert enough, I think that there's a route that they keep this within 10. Which is it now at 9.5 or is it at 10?
It's at 9.5.
It's at 9.5. Okay, and even if Vegas loses by a touchdown, which I can absolutely see, I think that the Raiders have a sense of unpredictability around just what they're able to produce now that Chip Kelly's gone, and the Chargers overall. Like, I'm sorry, man, I can't really just keep betting for them. Like, I can't keep rooting for them. They fucked me on almost every single pick, if not actually every pick that I've talked about them this year, and I both biasly want the Raiders to kind of shut that up again, but I think that O-line, we saw so many issues, and overall that defense also. Not saying that the Raiders have anything going on offense, but that defense has showed some major lapses in a bunch of leagues for a defense that you keep hearing is one of the top defenses in the league.
Yeah, if Max Crosby could play quarterback, wide receiver, and running back for the Raiders, maybe I go Raiders, but. The
pretty single position. It's just he's better than the current guy.
But Geno, that O-line, like everything, it just doesn't look pretty. And we saw this exact matchup earlier this year, and I'm pretty sure the Chargers ended up covering. Just want to confirm that. Shows my memory. I mean, God, it feels like we've been doing this since week 5, but it feels like it's been centuries. But yeah, you're talking about a 20-9 win last time they saw him. And I think it's an easy way to split, especially being at home this time.
It's a barely cover, but they do cover.
Player to watch for me in this game, I'm going to ride with you on this one. Just Ladd McConkey. You've seen the last couple weeks, like at the beginning of the year was all QJ, and then McConkey slowly started to get his targets back. And I mean, yeah, QJ is incredibly explosive on the boundary, but McConkey's going back to what he was last year as being just their go-to guy on offense. I don't think that changes. I don't know if we're going to see a Marion Hampton this week. I think it's leaning towards a decent chance. but I think McConkey's going to be the guy.
Yeah, I think McConkey's like also a guy between him and QJ that they kind of want to develop a bit more. Someone that they can rely on consistently rather than just, throw it up to QJ type of thing. And with McConkey, like we've seen just flashes of what him and Herbert could be. And you're just kind of waiting for that real breakout game this year.
McConkey fell in the draft, as we know, and he was picked right ahead of a team that we're about to talk about that could desperately use him. And that's the Buffalo Bills. They're heading to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh plus 4.5. Looks like we're going to see, I want to double check about what quarterback we're going to see from the Steelers.
I think Rodgers is looking to return this week.
But how much do you trust Unk, especially if he's hurt?
Right. Right.
That's a scary thing from my perspective. One thing that did shock me though, and I want to look up the exact number. All of the bets and all the money percentages in favor of Pittsburgh.
I don't blame that, and it also not as favorites. Like you do ultimately think that Buffalo comes out of here with a win, but
82% of the money.
Yeah, we've seen so much money. Sorry, it's not much. Sorry, not much money. We've seen so many instances of the Bills just in every single hole of where they lack. And can I have the floor real quick to kind of just shit on them?
Go ahead.
I'm a Bills fan, right? But I'm also realistic when it comes to sports. In the NBA, I'm a Nets fan. I know we are horrible, and it's years and years until we might be not the big three. That's sad to look back on, but a team that might be contending ever. I might even be a dad.
Can I go on a rant about the Bills, please? Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets are gonna win again, probably when I have a kid.
But so what I'm tying that back to is I'm very realistic when it comes to the teams I root for. I root for them at the same time. I'm not going to sugarcoat and try to make things seem better than they are. Exactly the case for Buffalo. God, there's so many areas of which if you look at a team that really is going to contend for a possible Super Bowl, like you got to have so much more on that team than what they already have. And Keon Coleman, we know, it's been kind of unknown really what exactly is going on there, but that he hasn't lived up to any sort of expectation close to what the Bills wanted him to be and anyone who's ever gotten him in fantasy, both me in both of those scenarios. This everybody eats offense is just something that I don't think it's something you can consistently count on to win a game. You look at the teams that are doing the best and they have both, their quarterback, but they have their go-to guy. And I don't think Kincaid is, a true go-to guy that's going to be the difference maker in every game. But you need a true wide receiver. Khalil Shakir has been okay, but Khalil Shakir on any other team to me is not exactly really the best wide receiver one. And
what teams would he be a wide receiver one for? I think you could put him on one hand and have a couple fingers left.
The Raiders, the Browns.
Well, let me change it so I get the Raiders off this list. Like just receiving option, because you take Bowers over that. He's not going to be the number one there. Maybe the Jets, he'd be the wide receiver one.
Yeah. Over Garrett?
Well, right now. But when Garrett said he'd be a 2. But I don't know if there's really a scenario.
Right. And to your point, that Bills roster just doesn't have much that really threatens you besides what can Josh Allen do with the ball. And we saw pretty much every single hole in that team come to life against Houston. The O-line started to really break down, of which, there are a bunch of injuries right now. Spencer Brown saw on that Houston game got just deleted against that pass rush, and they eventually had to take him out just because his injury was getting so much worse. I think the Bills definitely lean on Josh Allen and like his capabilities a little too much compared to what you actually give him as an option. And it's just been hard to watch. Especially we've talked about it all year. The Bills suck with the rush game, but then we also saw in Houston, not horrible against the pass, but there's just so many lapses. And as a Bills fan, and you want them to succeed, I want them to succeed. I just don't think they have enough, especially this year, to possibly contend with some of these teams that really do have that 1-2 punch. You got James Cook, you got Josh Allen, but to me, that's really it.
And it's worked to a certain degree. A team that started the year 4-0, obviously, and then you take 2 losses, 2 wins, and now it's been a little shaky ever since. But their win line, I always look back at it because if there's anybody that's got the analytics that we don't, it's going to be ESPN. And they have their win total at 11.5 right now. So there's definitely more to come. I think this is a win for Buffalo. I think the question of covering is what really scares people. The line at 4.5, it's moved to 3.5. You shit on the Bills so much there, yet we all are on Buffalo. What do they do? What do they do for you? Like, after that heartfelt, just pouring out all of your pain, how do you turn around and say that this team sucks, but yet they cover 3.5?
They listen to the Like That podcast, and they listen to this guy Brooklyn talk about his genuine opinion. No, I think in this game, like every week we've talked about, like, oh, the Bills need to make a statement. Their offense needs to come out and be like, we are still that team. And also, as a Bills fan, I can't just, as you preach, don't root against your team. And I think they do win this game. It's a lot of inconsistency. Like, one week the Bills look like the Bills that we expected them to be this year, and then the next week they shit the bed. You could almost call it law of averages. You saw that, bad performance against Houston. You're kind of banking on them to, if they are, a team that is planning on going deep into the playoffs, to bounce back and, fix some flaws here. It starts with the basics. Plug the run and figure out an offense that, and I honestly hate the everybody eats offense. Figure out an offense that is going to really make teams scramble as to, we can't just guard well, you want to try to guard everyone, but like, single out, certain guys that you're going to go to more, draw, targets to that, and then utilize your options everywhere else. You want to throw Shakir into a wide receiver 1 spot, treat him like he is a wide receiver 1.
Hey,
get him those targets. He's a capable guy.
But he's not necessarily a guy you put on a streak. He's not like he's a guy that kind of like, he's a modern day Julian Edelman in some ways. He's a yards after the catch type of guy in the middle of the field. Throw him that 5-yard slant. Just do it like 50 times.
If they get Kincaid back, just spam it. If they get Kincaid back, that is big for them. I just think they got to do a better job of utilizing not everyone that they have, but utilizing their best guys. And if you're gonna call Shakir wide receiver 1, give him wide receiver 1 looks.
Yeah, for me, the reason that I like Buffalo in this is the Packers defense. We said, we brought it up. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. And I'm not necessarily too excited about them. Like, they're middle of the pack in essentially almost every category, but funny enough, they do lead the league in passing yards allowed. So there's going to be, the ball is definitely going to fly here. But I like that. I just don't see a script where, because like with this loss here, then there's genuine questions about the Bills missing the playoffs. And I don't think that happens in any world. And just the cherry on top for me is the money percentage. There's nothing more than the casinos want than to take our money. And with 82% of it on one side, that's a big L for the sports books. And I don't think it's going to happen. That's going to be that game that everyone, when you look at it on paper, you're like, how do people put money on this? It's like you saw Mason Rudolph, have a good game against a bad Bears defense. And yeah, you saw the Bills struggle against the Texans. But at the end of the day, when you have Josh Allen at the helm, that's a guy that, in most scenarios, when he's not in front of murderer's row of a front in Houston, that he can make things happen.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I don't think there's really a route to victory for the Steelers, but I like the Bills. Both teams know that each game that they play from here on out is kind of a must-win, and the Bills have a lot more to prove, in my sense, than the Steelers have to just try to make the playoffs.
And for this game, my player to watch, it's going to be a running back in Pittsburgh. For how bad the Buffalo defense has been, you got to plug and play one of those Pittsburgh running backs, whether it's Warren, whether it's Gainwell. I know Gainwell usually gets that production when Warren's out. But we've talked about it numerous times on this podcast, how the Bills have struggled to defend the run. And they haven't, against Houston, Woody Marks had a good game. And, the Houston offense, or the Houston rushing offense isn't great. Like, to say that you had a bad run unit, to say, hey, we had a good game against Buffalo. That's been a common theme. So I'd say trust the running backs in this game for Pittsburgh.
I'm going with Khalil Shakir, a guy who I kind of just like shit on, saying he's not a wide receiver 1 in any team. But I'm going there because week by week he's been a guy who does get the looks, in a sense that he gets a lot of targets.
consistency wise, it's really hard to trust him to really be the difference maker in a game. But last week he did show against the Texans off defense that we know is very tough, that he can produce with maybe some luck, but also just some overall skill that he hasn't really been able to fully utilize yet. 110 yards in the game against Houston, facing a difficult defense with Pittsburgh. Still, he's probably going to draw Jalen Ramsey, but in a scenario like that, I do like Josh Allen to kind of continue to lean on him for a lot of those decent plays or decent chunk plays, because he out of that whole receiving room, he is the only real name that you can kind of look at and be like, he might be the guy.
One before we get into the prime times of this week, there was one game that we forgot to mention. It was a late add onto the spreadsheet, but it's Cardinals at Bucks. Tampa 2.5-point favorites. All three of us on Arizona. I mean, I've loved Arizona since Jacoby Brissett kind of stepped in, which is ironic to say, but he's been an against the spread monster. Obviously, you go into OT against the Jags, and unfortunately, he was not able to cover it there. But when you look at these two teams, at the end of the day, I wouldn't say health matters so much, but to a certain extent, especially, I kind of like this line because I don't think Baker plays next week. And being at 2.5, I love that.
So yeah, no, me too. I don't think he plays this weekend, especially I think if they do play him, it's kind of a putting you at risk scenario. You got some time still if you are the Bucks to make sure you're in a decent position. Game against the Rams, obviously that was ugly to watch, but that game again was over by half, and they made a good decision to make sure he sat that second half out. If you're playing against the Cardinals, God knows what Bridgewater really looks like for 4 quarters. But at the same time, there's a lot of unpredictability there, and I think even if they're getting Bucky Irving back this week, which is big for the Bucks, I think the Cardinals at this point have built up a lot of chemistry with Brissett at quarterback. Now, do we know if Kyler ever is doing anything this year?
The Kyler situation, I think he's a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Definitely.
I think there's a possibility that we might have seen him play his last game in Arizona.
Yeah,
but with how Brissett's been playing as a QB, I mean, you're talking about, I know it's fantasy points, but he's been the QB3 since he took over as the starting QB. We're talking about the most completions in a game. He's comfortable throwing, and that's the one. Probably, it's funny talking about a quarterback, but you talk about the biggest question mark to Kyler. It's throwing over the middle, making those he can throw the deep bomb, but he's not your consistent.
See over the lineman type of guy.
And Brissett's tall. But yeah, the Bucks are beat up.
I think we both. Oh yeah, they definitely are. No, I like the Cardinals here, and honestly, it is crazy to me that they're not honestly favored in a way. And I get with some names that you might see in Arizona or in Tampa Bay that you might consider them still favored there, but to me, Arizona's built up a lot of chemistry with Brissett, a lot of time to kind of get that offensive scheme now with him, and plus 2.5 makes me feel comfortable here with knowing that I honestly think the Cardinals are going to come out of this with a win. Seeing how they just played against the Jags that game, I know went to OT, but they held their own against a decent Jags defense, and going against now the Bucks shaken up team, I think Cardinals at 2.5 is perfect.
Yeah, and a Bucks defense that also has been slightly disappointing.
I agree.
Kind of on the bottom third where you're talking to EPA and such. But with that all being said, my player to watch in this game is going to be Jacoby Brissett. It's not flashy, but if you're a team that you picked up Jacoby Brissett on the waivers and each week you're like, I don't know, you're dumb.
Start him.
You got to do it. He's a must start.
Yep. Absolutely.
Jumping into primetime games, or actually, are you riding Brissett there? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brissett as well. The same exact reason I was with you on that the entire way.
I know everyone's been wondering. I know Nick's not here, but he has to have a pick of the week. We can't have an empty graphic, and which also that _pod on the socials if you don't see those. But his pick of the week, one that I almost went with too. I think it's I'd say a safe option in a lot of ways, and that's going to be the Broncos at the Commanders. Line opened up at 6.5. We've seen it drop down to 5.5, and all of us on Denver. I mean, my biggest worry of this game is just Bo Nix. The Broncos have done a really good job of taking control of games, but not necessarily they don't. If you could put your foot on the gas pedal, The Broncos put just their big toenail. Like there's no gas on those brakes. Like it is just like, we're gonna win this game. You're gonna think we might lose it the whole time, but we're gonna win it. Like they keep bad teams in it. But with that being said, a defense that is top 3. I can't call them one without Pat Surtain, but they are legit. And a Washington team that is bad. According to PFF, we're talking about the 31st ranked defense. The run game still, it's not going to be able to do anything here, but granted, it hasn't done anything all year. Looking at a couple of the points that Nick dropped in here for us, they allow the 4th most points to quarterbacks in fantasy. And they allow over 170 receiving yards per game to the wide receiver position. And so what is that telling you? It is going to be Bo Nix throwing it up to Courtland Sutton God knows how many times. But you can pick apart this Commanders defense in every way. The front line isn't good. The linebackers are old. The cornerbacks are bad. Yeah, you have
Troy
Bobby
Franklin
Wagner doing everything. What was that?
Troy Franklin's a name to watch this week.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that he's slowly emerging. Like Courtland Sutton is the better receiver, but you look week in and week out, and Franklin's continuously leading that team in targets. I know the chemistry from college with Bo Nix definitely, I think, plays to that to some degree. But this Washington team, they don't give you much hope to root for. I mean, they kept it close against Miami 2 weeks ago, but Miami covering the spread and taking care of business there. But the fact that they're in prime time is crazy. I think one thing to note is I'm saying all of this with Mariota as the starter. They haven't ruled out Jaden Daniels,
which is so wild to me.
It's so dumb. Just sit the guy.
Yeah, I know. Like, and God, his injury was so hard to watch. But God, why would you bring him back?
Not for this game.
No, not for this game, and I don't know why bring him back at all. I think
you're playing Madden and you get the notification, Jaden Daniels almost lost his left arm. Substitute, right. Keep. And they're like, you know what? Maybe we want the 5th pick instead of the 4th. Get in there,
Injury
Jaden.
risk is like 99%. What is the and yeah, this is like a franchise where like let's say it's a franchise, you're in the last couple of weeks and you're not making the playoffs. Like, let the guys sit, and that team's been hurt all year with McLaurin. I could honestly just destroy McLaurin. But Washington got to cut their losses and keep their pieces healthy while they can. Just a bad game to try to bring it back in.
Players to watch. To be honest with you, I don't have one. I don't like this Denver offense. Like the Commanders, you can't pick anybody. I mean, Debo's been serviceable to a certain degree. But I think my biggest hot take is I don't think, as a player to watch take, you could say, I don't think anybody in this game scores over 20 points except for Bo Nix.
Fair. I can't argue that at all. I'm only going to go back to Troy Franklin because with the volume percentage he's seen an increase, sort of an unpredictable guy, someone who in the last 5 games has really only had one where he's been under 12-ish points, and in some of those now he's had in week 8 against Dallas he had 2 touchdowns, put up 26 on that. You're going against now a Washington team that's defensively shit. If you trust him in the red zone like that, like Bo Nix has shown that he's got some capability there. Possible another pop-off week for him. So that's really the only name I'm watching here. But Courtland Sutton's old. Marvin Mims hasn't really done much. Evan Ingram is a player on the Denver Broncos is really all I know.
Yeah, Evan Ingram is a tight end. That's established, but that's it.
He's a player who's played in the NFL at a point in time.
And then our last matchup of the week, Monday Night Football. We have the Giants at the Patriots. It's funny because you mentioned this earlier. I am a firm believer that as a sports fan, you don't place money against your own team. You don't bet unders on your own team. You don't bet against them in any format. That's where I think the point of a degenerate gambler is created. And with that being said, this is not money that I will place of my own on it. But you're talking about a Jameis Winston team that's 2-0 against the spread. Like if you look on paper, who do you think is a better? I know this is it's not always the same when you say it this way, but I feel like most people say the Lions are a better team than the Patriots on paper. And that was a game that went into overtime at home.
that was weird.
You saw Jameis Winston get a
weird game.
flea flicker touchdown. I cannot say that word. And then also,
that was a crazy play because that play was blown up, and he had like a second and a half to get rid of it. And it was a perfect throw.
and you'd think that's the craziest play that Jameis had in that game, but it's not.
And we all know it's not.
Yeah, Gunnar Olszewski passing touchdown to Jameis Winston, and I don't know.
30 yards.
I don't know if
Yeah, they won that in for 20 or 15.
I don't know if I could go back into that Lions locker room and look at my teammates after I just ate some turf from Jameis Winston on a pass. And it's so funny because earlier this week, Brooklyn was playing Nick and Madden and somehow beat him while using quarterbacks as receivers.
Malik Willis, Mariota, both. Malik Willis with a 60-yard Moss.
Yeah, and I was saying, if somebody does that to me, I would probably, that's a control. Like, I don't break controllers. That might be. That, if Malik Willis is getting, 60 receiving yards on my head. We say all of this, and Jameis Winston, who never caught a pass in the NFL, never caught a pass in college, stiff arms you to the ground and takes it to the house. That's unbelievable. And I don't know. Yeah, again, you're walking back into that locker room. I don't know. That meme of like the Phoenix Suns after a win working out. That's my ass. I'm in the gym after that.
Winners work, baby. Oh God.
But yeah, I say this. I like the Giants. The Patriots, a good unit, but you see Will Campbell go down. You saw Jared Wilson that also is dealing with injury problems. It could be big for New England in that way, and I think they still take care of business, but I think this game probably is within like a 3 to 4 point margin.
Just like how we talked about the Chiefs possibly fucking us again at -3.5. Like spread wise, I am going with the Pats -7.5 again. Last time was -7, but initially was -7.5. Dart is coming back this week, but I just keep looking at this Giants team, and there's just really not much there. And for whatever reason, I trusted Jameis Winston-led Giants over a Jackson Dart-led Giants. But yeah, Patriots, still won against the Bengals against the defense for the defense. But if you look at the Giants defense, still nothing all too crazy. I think that just also Will Campbell was a significant injury in that game, but I still think that the Patriots have offensively so much momentum moving for them, and that defense is still so sound, and the Giants just have nothing offensively on that team that can really work for them, besides like Wandale. But even then,
I think this Patriots team does have some holes.
Sure, and every team does. But you want to talk about a guy who's like, what team is he actually the first receiving option for? Let's talk about Wandale Robinson.
Probably the Bills. I would take Wandale over Shakir. I don't know if that's a crazy take or not.
I don't think it's a bad take. I actually think that's like a really good matchup.
Yeah, it's close. You got to think about that for a minute.
That's honestly, if you're Khalil Shakir, if you ever hear this podcast, I'm so sorry, but
listen, man, you're the GOAT in fantasy. Like, if I need a guy to get me like anywhere between 11 to 16 points,
you're my guy.
You're my guy. But if I need 18, man, you know what? Maybe that's where Wandale comes in. Yeah. But I think Jameis is going to continue to pull shit out of his ass, and it's going to be a closer game than we think. Also, a Monday night game. There's some prime time. They're going to bring up all the lore of Giants, Patriots. But yeah, I think they take care of business, but I don't think they cover.
Keep in mind, Dart he got a full practice today.
Oh,
so it's something to watch.
That's not great.
From what I read, him and Jameis are both seeing first team practice or first team reps.
Yeah, you could throw to either one of them. Maybe Dart throws it to Winston.
Hasn't cleared concussion protocol yet, but this game's prime time. Like I think by then there's a good chance he comes back.
My player to watch in this game.
Does that sway at all for you?
What was that?
Does that sway at all for you if Dart's the quarterback over Jameis?
Maybe partially. I don't know. Like I still think last week against the Bengals, like that you could argue that was like your law of averages point for the Patriots, but I think that this team at some point has to come slightly back down to earth. I mean, you still won by 6, but they had two instances where they were in the red zone they didn't convert. That game could have very easily been a 2-score game or more than. I
think at home at Gillette too. That just kind of strengthens the.
7.5 is a big number, and I don't know if the Patriots have. And I'm going to look this up really quick, but I don't think they've covered that number.
7.5 is a big number. I'm taking an 11.5 spread as my pick of the week.
but a team that's we've seen that before. You know, like the
Right.
outside of the Jets minus 12.5. And I guess you could argue the Cincinnati game when the line opened, it was at 7.5. But they've had reasons to doubt this, in my opinion, and the Giants are continuing to ride a high. It pains me to do so, but I think the Patriots take care of business, but maybe not by 8. My player to watch for this game is going to be Travion Henderson, which is crazy when you talk about this Giants front. But the last 3 weeks, we've seen that the way that the Giants have been screwing themselves over is just letting the running backs have it all. And you know, I'm not saying Travion Henderson is Jahmyr Gibbs, but if you want like a baby Gibbs, that's what you got with Henderson. Your receiving threat, you kind of like that dual threat running back, and I think that's where the opportunities are going to go this week.
Fair enough. I'm gonna double down on my last week's pick. Kayshon Boutte, really quiet role last week, but he was in the game. You know,
He
that's
did.
what my girlfriend shared.
He did have a play last week where he got a PI called in the end zone that put him on the 1. So, there was a red zone target.
And I'm doubling down here because, like I mentioned in last week's episode, his production before his injury was pretty decent, and I think as May has been into rhythm, sure they played a couple games with them. He's found some guys that he trusts as well, but Boutte's a guy that I think that they have there, that they know he's a very talented guy that can start to ease his way back into that lineup. And yes, I know very quiet production. He was on the field. It's just each game now becomes a work back into progress, I should say. And I think a game like this against a Giants team that overall defensively isn't really that strong, another chance for him to have a bounce back here. So I'm going to double down and go Kayshon Boutte here. Possibly see another hopeful performance like he did before he got injured.
And that's your week, ladies and gentlemen. Picks of the week. I have myself doubling down on the Chiefs minus 3.5. Same exact line from last week. I am fairly confident, as it is, more than fairly. You're talking. I don't want to flex my record again. We lost last week, but 6-2 still looks nice. You've got your pick of the week, which I've already blanking. Or sorry, Seattle minus 11.5 against Max Brosmer. That should be exciting. And then Nick taking Denver to cover on the road against Washington at 5.5. Before we go, Brooklyn, favorite Thanksgiving food?
Dude, give me a whole ass turkey leg.
Fair enough. You get the authority in the house to get the leg?
Bro, yeah. I'm the one guy who consistently, gyms a lot. And for my parents, first off, my mom, she'd rather have like turkey breasts, like not really a huge like dark meat person. My dad, he doesn't really care what he eats. My brother just like takes what's there, and I'm just like, give me that turkey leg. Just need the whole thing.
Boom, just flop it on the plate.
No,
Classic. Are you putting gravy on it or no?
No. Gravy on my mashed potatoes. Not a huge green beans guy. Love my stuffing like everyone else does. But my plate's pretty simple. I get my carbs, my protein, and a green if I have to.
Yeah, for me, it's the stuffing. My mom's stuffing is by far. I look forward to it every year.
Is it the same one she made on Saturday?
Yeah.
Oh, send me the recipe.
Yeah, I got a little preview during Friendsgiving. It was great. But with that being said, I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Right after you're done listening to this podcast, if you don't already, follow us, subscribe to us. Everything's like that _pod. And I'm excited for a good week of football and some great food.
See a 3 for 3 coming this week. Low key 3 picks that I think outside of Dallas maybe being a possible challenge. 2 picks that I'm very confident in.
Maybe we manifested it by going 0-3. That's what happens. We had paper bags on us to start this episode. Next episode, you're going to see us rolled up on our sleeves with all the coin we made.
Hey man, I will happily take a Dallas being wrong if it means we go 3 for 3.
I love it.
Fair enough.
But happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you later.